For many people around the world, Max Baer Jr. will always be remembered as Jethro Bodine, the tall, innocent, and sometimes foolish character from the classic television show The Beverly Hillbillies. The show was a huge success during the 1960s and early 1970s, and it made Max a household name almost overnight. But behind the bright lights, the laughter, and the cheerful music of the show, there was a more complicated and often painful story that Max carried with him for most of his life. One of the most important parts of that story involved his co-star Irene Ryan, the actress who played Granny, the sharp-tongued but loving grandmother of the Clampett family. On screen, their characters were family. They argued, joked, and shared many memorable moments that fans still love today. For decades, viewers believed that their relationship off-screen was just as warm and friendly as it appeared on television. But, as Max reached the age of 88, he finally spoke more openly about what really happened behind the scenes. His words revealed a truth that surprised many fans and offered a deeper look into the emotional struggles he faced during the peak of his fame. Max explained that while he respected Irene Ryan as a professional and admired her talent, their working relationship was not always easy. Irene was much older than him and had been in show business for many years before the Beverly Hillbillies ever began. She had strong opinions, a very direct personality, and a way of speaking her mind that could sometimes feel harsh, especially to a younger actor who was still trying to find his place in the industry. Max has said that, at times, he felt misunderstood and even judged by her. He often believed that Irene saw him only as the silly character he played, not as a serious person or a capable actor. This feeling of being looked down upon stayed with him for years, quietly shaping how he saw himself and his career. Max has shared that he was under enormous pressure during those years. Being the son of famous boxer Max Baer Sr., he already felt the weight of living up to a powerful family name. Then, when the Beverly Hillbillies made him famous, he became trapped in the image of Jethro. While fans loved the character, casting directors and producers could not see past it. Max wanted to prove that he could play deeper, more serious roles, but opportunities were rare. In this environment, every interaction on set felt important to him, and every comment or reaction from his co-stars carried extra meaning. According to Max, some of Irene Ryan's remarks, even when they were meant as jokes for professional criticism, made him feel small and unappreciated. He has explained that he often stayed quiet, choosing not to speak up or confront her, because he did not want to create tension or appear ungrateful for his success. Instead, he carried those feelings inside. Over time, this created a sense of emotional distance between them. While they continued to work together for nearly a decade, the bond that fans imagined simply did not exist in the way people believed. Max has said that he does not blame Irene entirely. He understands now that she came from a different generation of performers, one where toughness was seen as necessary for survival in a difficult industry. Still, at 88 years old, he finally admitted that their relationship left a lasting mark on him. It affected how he viewed himself as an actor and as a person, especially during a period when he already felt trapped by typecasting and public expectations. For many years, he stayed silent, because he did not want to damage her legacy or upset fans who loved the show. But with time, reflection, and age, Max decided that it was important to speak honestly, not to attack, but to share his truth. He wanted people to understand that even behind the most beloved television shows, there are human emotions, misunderstandings, and private struggles that the audience never sees. His words offered a new way to look at the history of the Beverly Hillbillies, not as a perfect fairy tale of Hollywood success, but as a real workplace where personalities, pressures, and emotions sometimes collided in painful ways. As Max Baer Jr. looked back on his life, he began to understand that his experience with Irene Ryan was only one part of a much larger journey that had shaped him from a young age. Growing up as the son of a world-famous boxer meant that attention and expectations followed him everywhere. His father, Max Baer Sr., was known for his strength, fame, and bold personality, and people often assumed that his son would naturally follow in his footsteps or live up to the same larger-than-life image. But Max Jr. was different. He was thoughtful, curious, and deeply interested in understanding how the world worked. He worked hard in school, excelled in sports, and later studied business and philosophy in college. These were not the choices of someone who wanted to rely only on fame. They were the choices of a young man who wanted to build something meaningful on his own terms. When he entered the world of acting, he did so with hope and excitement. His early roles on television gave him confidence, and when he landed the part of Jethro on the Beverly Hillbillies, he believed it was the beginning of a long and varied career. Instead, it became both his greatest success and his greatest limitation. The character was loved by millions, but it quickly became a label that he could not escape. Directors, producers, and even audiences began to see him only as Jethro, the naive country boy who wanted to be a genius, but never quite succeeded. Max has said that this constant typecasting made him feel invisible as a real person. He wanted to grow, to challenge himself, and to show different sides of his talent. But the industry did not give him that chance. Within this emotional struggle, his relationship with Irene Ryan took on deeper meaning. She was older, more experienced, and already well established. While she may not have intended to hurt him, her strong personality and sharp words sometimes reinforced the feeling that he was not being taken seriously. Max has admitted that at the time, he did not have the emotional tools or confidence to express how he felt. Instead of speaking openly, he kept his thoughts to himself, believing that silence was the best way to maintain peace on set and protect his career. Over the years, that silence became a heavy burden. When the show ended in 1971, Max tried to move forward. He took on other television roles and began working in film, but the shadow of Jethro followed him everywhere. This frustration eventually led him to step behind the camera. He became a producer, director, and writer, determined to take control of his own creative future. In films like Macon County Line and Ode to Billy Joe, he proved that he was capable of serious storytelling and strong leadership. These projects were not just career moves. They were personal statements. They were his way of saying that he was more than the character that had defined him for so long. Still, even as he found success in new areas, the emotional memories of his earlier years remained. When people asked him about the Beverly Hillbillies, they usually wanted funny stories and happy memories. For a long time, Max gave them exactly that. He spoke kindly of the show and his co-stars, including Irene Ryan. He did this out of respect and because he did not want to take away from something that had brought joy to so many people. But inside, he carried a more complex truth. As he grew older, he began to reflect more deeply on his life, his relationships, and the moments that had shaped him. He realized that honesty, even when it is uncomfortable, can be a form of healing. At 88, Max felt that he had nothing left to prove and nothing left to hide. He was no longer worried about protecting an image or pleasing an industry that had already moved on. Instead, he wanted to speak as a human being, sharing not just the highlights of his career, but also the emotional struggles that had defined him. When he finally spoke about Irene Ryan in this honest way, it was not done with anger or bitterness. It was done with reflection. He acknowledged her talent, her importance to the show, and the challenges of working in a demanding industry. But he also acknowledged his own pain, his feelings of being overlooked, and the emotional distance that existed between them. In doing so, Max offered a more truthful, human story. one that reminds us that even the most beloved entertainment is created by real people, each carrying their own fears, hopes, and unspoken struggles. In the final stage of his life, Max Baer Jr. has come to see his story not just as a personal journey, but as a lesson about fame, misunderstanding, and the importance of speaking one's truth. His reflections on Irene Ryan are not meant to change how people remember her, or diminish the joy that the Beverly Hillbillies brought to millions of homes. Instead, they serve as a reminder that behind every smile on screen, there may be feelings that go unseen. Max has said that for many years, he believed staying silent was the right thing to do. He wanted to protect the legacy of the show and avoid conflict. But with age came clarity. He realized that silence, while often seen as kindness, can also prevent healing. By finally sharing his experience, he is not asking for sympathy, but understanding. He wants people to know that the entertainment industry, like any workplace, is made up of human relationships that are sometimes complicated, strained, and imperfect. Max has also spoken about how these experiences shaped the man he became outside of acting. After stepping away from the spotlight, he turned to business, real estate, and long-term projects that allowed him to work independently. He pursued ideas that reflected both his creative instincts and his practical education. In many ways, these ventures gave him the freedom that acting never did. They allowed him to define success on his own terms, rather than through public approval or industry expectations. Yet even in these later achievements, the emotional lessons of his early career remained with him. His relationship with Irene Ryan taught him about the power of words, the impact of unspoken feelings, and the importance of recognizing one's own worth. He has said that if he could speak to his younger self, he would encourage him to be more open, to trust his voice, and to understand that respect must be mutual. At 88, Max Baer Jr. no longer sees himself only as Jethro or as the son of a famous boxer. He sees himself as a man who lived a full life, experienced success and disappointment, and learned from both. His decision to finally tell the truth about his relationship with Irene Ryan is part of that larger reflection. It is not about blame, but about honesty. It is about acknowledging that even in environments filled with laughter and applause, there can be quiet moments of hurt that shape a person's identity. For fans of the Beverly Hillbillies, this revelation may change how they view the show, but it does not have to lessen their love for it. Instead, it adds depth. It reminds us that art is created by people, and people are complex. Max's story encourages us to look beyond the surface of fame and recognize the emotional realities that often remain hidden. In sharing his truth so late in life, Max offers something rare in the world of celebrity, a moment of genuine reflection, free from the need to impress or entertain. He speaks not as a character, not as a star, but as a human being who has spent decades understanding himself and the experiences that shaped him. His words invite us to consider our own lives, our own unspoken feelings, and the relationships that have left lasting marks on us. Ultimately, Max Baer Jr.'s story is not only about Irene Ryan or the Beverly Hillbillies. It is about growth, self-awareness, and the courage to finally be honest, even when the world has already written its own version of your story. Through this late-life confession, Max reminds us that it is never too late to speak your truth, and that understanding, even when it comes after many years, can bring a sense of peace that fame alone never could.